overcome. Happily blackness shines brighter than the sun. I do believe that the time is now, and I refuse to ever have to bow my head down. My black is beautiful.
A new generation of African Americans is raising its voice against what it sees as racism and injustice.
I think what we're seeing is the birth of a mass movement.
The children and grandchildren of the civil rights era say they want freedom.
I want to be free. And in America, you're not free here if you're black.
I have a dream that one day...
This time, there's no charismatic leader.
...transform the dangling discords of our nation. I have a dream...
Instead, there are citizens, social media, and searing determination.
You don't know me or my people's history.
This is our generation. It's a new generation, and there's new ways to fight this battle.
The Black Lives Matter campaign has grown from a hashtag to a political force.
And the caskets are getting smaller and smaller. We have to stop this. We have to let the world know what's happening here.
Absolutely, I believe that Black Lives Matter is the most important political movement to happen in my lifetime.
It's unfolding in an America where the dream of a black president came true, but where a third of black men end up in jail.
We as a society, particularly given our history, have to take this seriously.
We're bringing you the stories of Americans who want their country to know that Black Lives Matter.
Wonderful, wonderful, powerful.
Only an hour's drive from the White House, Baltimore is a tough little place. It's lost 100,000 jobs since the 1950s and a third of its population.
Let's go home! Let's go home!
Today, just over 600,000 people call this one-team city home. Capturing the urban upheaval is photographer Devon Allen.
Baltimore means opportunity. Opportunity to rethink, regrow, change. Thank you.
You gotta get and take a picture? No, I'm gonna still make you look beautiful, though. You put your head to the side, you just looking over there.
Baltimore is everything to me. This is my home.
We are survivalists. We are fighters.
It's hard to have dreams when you stuck in reality. Tanks on the block making sure we watching Love and Hip Hop. Man, forget that job. I'ma bounce back better than I ever did and scream I'm black till it sounds repetitive. Baltimore to me is home. It's where those thugs and criminals are really fathers and mothers.
One of the greatest moments in my life was becoming a father, and then it was finding photography. That's my second baby, so that's what it feels like, you know, like, it's just, when you find that thing that can, you know, change your life, you know, it's amazing.
When Devon looks through his lens, he sees glimpses of his own life.
He was like my big brother. You know, I lost both my best friends back in 2013.
The 27-year-old grew up here in West Baltimore. He's lost more than 20 of his friends to shootings and drug violence. One face stares out from the walls of this neighbourhood. It's the face of Freddie Gray, a young man who was arrested on this corner.
Look at his leg. That boy's leg look broke. His leg broke and y'all dragging him like that.
The 25-year-old was injured in the encounter and begged for help.
I've been recorded.
He was loaded into a police van, but he never even made it to the cells.
I got it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Freddie Gray died from spinal injuries a week later on the 19th of April.
Rest in peace, Freddie. You're my home.
Community anger over his death erupted on the streets. Devon Allen took to the streets with his camera.
It was like a movie. Like, I still can't believe it happened. It's forever changed Baltimore, and it changed me forever.
His local knowledge put him ahead of the media pack, and his images went viral, all the way to the cover of Time magazine. They told a much deeper story than many of the mainstream media outlets.
I understood the power of photography, and I knew that people needed to see the real story and what was really going on. So I just put them out there, and I just let them run wild. You know, they were just sticking to the script. If it bleeds, it leads, and that's all they were worried about. They wasn't talking about how, you know, we took our community back.
Community organiser J.C. Faulk was one of the thousands on the streets during the uprising. He sees the anger not only over Freddie Gray's death, but also the neglect of the city's poorest neighbourhoods.
Huge swaths of Baltimore have been forgotten on the east and the west. Just so much. Like, you could ride around in some of these neighborhoods and 70 or 80% of the properties are boarded up, and they've been boarded up since the 60s when Martin Luther King got killed. It's insane that we have a major American city where we have thousands and thousands of black people living in squalor in an American city.
Baltimore had burned before, back in 1968, when Dr. King was assassinated. Now, a new generation is rising.
A lot of people say that picture reminds them of the 60s, you know, and I think that's what basically that picture unites a big generation gap, you know, uniting that culture. I think that picture basically put everything into perspective, the times that we're living in, and a lot of things have changed, but things can easily progress backwards if you don't stay on top of these issues.
We're still fighting to be free, and every once in a while it looks like we're gonna get there. Every once in a while it looks like at least there's some hope for us to get there, and then it all gets killed.
Follow through, shots fired, shots fired!
License turn off. Go ahead and take your seatbelt off for me. I didn't even do that. Go ahead and take your seatbelt off.
These graphic images of police brutality have marked a bloody turning point in US history.
I've been recorded. What car they come out of,
Whoa!
We're seeing police kill people on camera, murder them, and nothing gets done.
It was the shooting of unarmed teenager Tyrone Martin in Florida in 2012 that set off a wave of fury across America.
If I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon.
I think the weight of what had been happening for years in this country really helped to amplify what happened in the death of Trayvon Martin.
State of Florida versus George Zimmerman. Verdict, we the jury find George Zimmerman not guilty.
Security guard George Zimmerman was acquitted of Trayvon's killing.
Does either side want to poll the jury?
This was the event that sparked the hashtag Black Lives Matter.
We were blindsided by him being acquitted.
We are tired of going to jail for nothing and others going home for something.
But also saying we will protect our children and this cannot happen again.
You don't touch me.
But it did, over and over.
Shots fired! Shots fired!
Only a year later, unarmed 18-year-old Michael Brown was shot dead by police in Ferguson, Missouri.
Police killed dude. Police killed him, yeah. Police killed dude. Police killed him, yeah. Police killed dude. Police killed him, yeah.
The streets exploded and the Black Lives Matter hashtag spread around the world.
The fight never really stopped. When you see some injustice, document it. You have to document it.
People say we shouldn't focus on the police brutality so much, we should focus on other things. Well, when you have a knife at your throat and you have someone standing with a boot on your head, it's really hard to focus on something other than you might die any moment.
That's dope shit, man. That's dope shit. Yeah. What up, what up? Yeah, you know.
The campaign has become more than simply capturing images of injustice. It uses social media to rally support and build political pressure.
You know how to find me. I'm always out here, baby.
We were able to hit people emotionally and make them understand that this is not simply a cause, this is real Black people's actual lives. So Black Lives Matter is a rallying cry to say, to affirm for Black people that we matter, but also to make demands of a system to change.
In Baltimore this year, few were expecting justice in the Freddie Gray case. But what happened next made history. The city's young prosecutor, Marilyn Mosby, announced that the 6 police officers accused of causing Freddie Gray's death would be indicted.
To those that are angry, hurt, or have their own experiences of injustice at the hands of police officers, I urge you to channel the energy peacefully as we prosecute this case. I have heard your calls for no justice, no peace. However, your peace is sincerely needed as I work to deliver justice on behalf of Freddie Gray.
I think it's huge that Mosby indicted them. Huge in terms of impact here and in terms of impact everywhere else. It gives people hope, you know, it makes them think that maybe we can stop people from killing us.
We now know when the trials will take place. Officer Porter, November the 30th. Then the next trial will take place in the new year, January 1st for Officer Goodson.
The indictment has rocked the Baltimore Police Department. It won't comment on the detail of the case, which is still before the courts. But one officer has agreed to speak to Foreign Correspondent on the condition he's not identified.
What was the reaction from officers when you heard the news that charges were actually being laid?
Disbelief, shock, and just thoughts that, you know, the officers were out trying to do their job.
Joe has been in the force for more than 15 years. He believes police are blamed for social and economic problems far beyond their control.
We're the whipping boys of society. We're the first symbol of the government. A lot of people take their anxiety and anger out on the government by seeing the police and saying, F you.
There's some bad cops out there who really need to be put under greater scrutiny.
There definitely is. Like any profession, there's people who take advantage of their position. You know, maybe they are missing something in their life and they take it out on unfortunate people. The bullies of the world. They're bad in life anywhere they go, but then especially if you give them some authority and some power, it's a terrible situation.
Black Lives Matter is of the belief that it's not simply about bad apples. It's also about an unjust policing system that has to be completely transformed. And so the 6 officers being prosecuted is one thing. An examination of the policing system is something else and something that's more necessary.
The City of Baltimore has agreed to pay Freddie Gray's family $6.4 million in compensation. But other families are still waiting for justice.
They take black life in every way. They just use the gun about once a day. Find us in the streets, we bout that life. Toe to toe with the police, we bout that life. Defending mine and yours, we bout that life. Since we got to these shores, we bout that life.
Tyrone West, my brother was brutally murdered.
Tawanda Jones's brother Tyrone West died after being arrested by Baltimore police in 2013.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice!
Every Wednesday night, she leads a protest called West Wednesday to keep the case in the headlines.
I won't stop. I can't stop until killer cops are in cell blocks. I won't stop.
I will never give up. The day I give up is when killer cops are in cell blocks. We need to stand up, rise together. Because where there's unity, nothing can break through that. They may have guns and weapons, but we have voices and we have power. If we knew how powerful we were, none of this stuff wouldn't happen.
Justice for Tyrone West! Justice for Tyrone West!
This is the 114th week in a row that Tyrone West's family and their supporters have gathered to protest not only against his death, but to demand more information to try and find out exactly what happened. Tyrone West was 44 years old, a father and grandfather. Tyrone's sister Tawanda has agreed to take us back to where her brother was killed. She's still driving the same car he drove that night.
It's so hard. It's so hard. But I'm only doing it today because I know it needs to be done. But it's so hard. It's like a hole in your heart that I can't explain. It's so hard.
Tyrone West was driving along here on the evening of the 18th of July 2013, giving a lift to a female friend. He was unarmed and not under the effects of any drugs or alcohol.
This is it. This is cute. Yes, oh my God. Now this is where it gets hard. I'm sorry.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Police pulled over Tyrone West because they thought he was acting suspiciously. The situation quickly escalated as Tyrone struggled and the police called in backup.
This is like actually where he was drug out my car by his hair. And they said, witnesses said he was beat from this side of the street all the way to that side of the street. And he's, help, help, Trayvon Martin, he's running all up and down here screaming, help. Screaming, help, help. And none of those animals would stop, I'm sorry.
still very, very painful for your family.
Yes, but nobody would stop and help him. The saddest part is, brutal as my brother's death was, the cover-up is more brutal. The cover-up is worse. For the simple fact, how can you do that to a human life? How can people know that wrong happened and not tell what they saw?
Witnesses say Tyrone West was tasered, pepper sprayed and struck several times by police. He stopped breathing and died. More than 2 years later, no charges have been laid.
Is there justice in America right
It's
now?
no justice, it's just us. We need to stick together and dismantle this corrupt system. It's no justice.
Black people have been living in this culture for centuries, and we're afraid of the system that's supposed to be protecting us. It's like we're in a place that is home on some levels or another, but it never feels like home. It always feels like you're someplace you're not supposed to be.
Less than an hour's drive from Baltimore, it's a very different America. Traditions run deep in the countryside of Pennsylvania. But this quiet town is home to a former Baltimore police officer who blew the whistle on racism and brutality in the force.
I was once proud of my law enforcement career, but I now realize you cannot be in that system. You cannot participate in a system that has structural and institutionalized racism and keeps our fellow humans down. You can't participate in that system and be good. I was not good. I was not a good cop because I was in that situation. There's no other way around it.
Michael Wood spent 11 years in the Baltimore Police Department before he was discharged with a shoulder injury in 2014. The uniform and the badge really meant something. He was a tough young cop who showed little fear on the streets.
I wanted to be in those bad neighborhoods, but you have to be the big guy. You have to be the boss. You can't have any weaknesses.
But Michael was a bit of a rebel in the ranks, questioning the law enforcement practices that had been unquestioned for decades. The death of Freddie Gray and the police denials of responsibility that followed infuriated him.
In Baltimore, the citizens didn't trust the police before Freddie Gray, and they don't trust the police after Freddie Gray. The question is why aren't the police doing something to remedy that? They're doing absolutely nothing. If anything, we keep making it worse and worse. We're like somebody that's stuck in this ideology and we're digging our heels in, just refusing to change despite loads of evidence right in front of our faces.
Where Michael Wood started his police career, in Sandtown, Winchester, the very same neighbourhood where Freddie Gray grew up. To fully understand the context of the Freddie Gray case, it's really important to try and get your mind around what's going on in this neighbourhood. The statistics from this area paint a terrible picture of dysfunction and disadvantage. Young people here have more chance of going to jail than to university. The numbers are shocking.
So right now, approximately 450 people from Sandtown, Winchester neighborhood are in prison. 450 people from one neighborhood at a cost of $17 million. Now, if we took $17 million, how many college educations, how much socioeconomic improvement, how much opportunity can we give the residents of Sandtown, Winchester, so they don't end up in the criminal justice system? So that's our goal, right? Our goal is not in the criminal justice system. So as police officers, we should be looking for goals to not have people end up in the criminal justice system. Instead, every solution we have is to push them into the criminal justice system.
Long live Freddie Gray, man.
This was actually my first post where I walked foot in a unit called DSU. So you come down here and this is the Baltimore you think. This is the Baltimore that no one cares about, right?
And when you think back now, how much of your job, in a way, was filling the prison system?
I essentially think that that is what police do. And everything else that you think would be good, those are outliers. So helping somebody or solving a violent crime, that's actually like, I'm gonna go like below 10% of what the totality of police work is.
So you spent a lot of your time in these neighbourhoods picking up and locking up black people to go into the prison system.
I'm almost gonna say that that's exclusively what I did, because that's what gets measured.
Black Lives Matter.
Justice for Freddie, baby.
Justice for Freddie.
The revolutionary is still in solution, brother.
That's why Freddie Gray's name echoes so loudly on the streets here.
Everybody out here is Freddie Gray. Freddie Gray been around here for years. He Freddie Gray. He's Freddie Gray. I'm a Freddie Gray. He's Freddie Gray.
These young people not only knew Freddie, they've all had their own experiences of being harassed by police.
I'm like, it's us how we dress and talk. Like they target us. Like that's not fair. Like when we came out that morning, our friend died for nothing for running, man.
He ain't see that coming.
He ain't see that coming at all. He ain't know the police was gonna kill him.
Every day you're thinking it could happen.
Yeah. It happen any day now. That's what the kids that come out to school.
A police helicopter hovers above. The locals nickname it the ghetto bird. It watches over them all day at a cost of thousands of dollars, while many basic services are neglected. So they'll just keep going round and round and round this same spot?
Yep. Finding somebody else to doing something, constantly watching, constantly monitoring, waiting for the single
I think they're having a good look at us, just quietly.
I think as a black mother, you know, getting children through life, being a mom is difficult enough, right? Being a black mother, right, where I know that they have targets on their back is even more difficult.
I think it says a lot about America that it throws black people away, as if black people are not talented, as if black people are not loving, as if black people are not capable. And so I think that America is doing an incredibly bad thing by taking those kids and making them valueless in this culture.
There are now more than 2.2 million Americans in jail at a cost of $80 billion a year. A small coalition of US politicians is trying to do something about it.
The time for lamentations is past. The time for legislation is upon us.
Senator Cory Booker is one of the leading voices. He wants to reduce prison sentences for non-violent criminals and provide more support when inmates return to the community.
It's devastated our economy, if you think about it just objectively. There's studies that show that we would have about 20% less poverty in the United States if we had incarceration rates that were similar to our industrial peers. We understand that there's no difference between blacks and whites in America in dealing drugs or using drugs. In fact, some studies show that young white men have a higher rate of dealing drugs. But the arrests, African Americans will be arrested almost 4 times more, about 3.7 times more than somebody that's white, even though there's no difference. it actually makes us more dangerous as a society. Because when you incarcerate someone, most people are coming out. But then when we do what America does, which add on what are called collateral consequences, tens of thousands of things that prevent them from reintegrating into society as full citizenships, makes it more difficult for them to get a job, more difficult for them to get food stamps or housing or business licenses or student loans.
What's happening here in Baltimore is part of a much bigger picture of race, inequality and violence in the US. To take you deeper into that story, we're on our way to one of the most celebrated but segregated cities in America, Chicago. Nothing shy about Chicago. America's third largest city is the home of the world's first skyscraper and full of ambition. But it's almost as if there are two Chicagos. Only a few miles from downtown is the South Side, home to most of the city's black residents. This is where the Black Lives Matter story becomes more complicated. It's not just about violence against black communities, it's the violence within black communities. The church is a sanctuary from the troubles of the neighbourhood. Almost everyone in this congregation has lost a friend or relative to gun violence. Last year, more than 2,500 people were shot in Chicago. That's one victim every 3 hours. Most were black.
This is where I stand on the word of God. And I stand here today a strong woman of God. The last time I was here, I was sitting right where you're sitting at. And my daughter was laying here. And I was lost.
Natasha Stingley's daughter, Marissa, was only 19 years old when she was shot dead in June 2013. She was a college student with a promising future ahead of her.
I love you. You're doing a good job and you're not going to give up. Amen.
What were you most proud of Marissa?
Everything. Everything about her. I was just proud. Proud to be her mother. Proud and grateful that God had given me her. She was my firstborn, my one and only daughter, my best friend.
Marissa was with a carload of friends. The young driver got in an argument with a man in the next car, who then opened fire. Marissa was killed instantly. All of her friends were wounded. They saw the gunman but refused to cooperate with police because they feared retribution.
So y'all let him go walk free. But 2 years, 2 months, 21 days, y'all let him walk free to shoot somebody else, to devastate another family, and take the lives of other people. So y'all so dirty, y'all let him do that. What type of people are y'all? No heart, no conscience, to nothing. Hell empty. You know why? Because all the damn demons and devils running free here.
In some neighbourhoods on the south side, it's easier for teenagers to get a gun than a job.
I want to stop violence, stop making bullets.
Young black men are turning on each other and catching scores of bystanders in the crossfire.
I've been on the scenes in the aftermath of shootings. All of these things are very real in my life. And so how do I feel about it? This is outrageous that a country this great should have and at such extreme levels of violence. About 30 people murdered every day, countless more that are shot every day. This is not who we are as a nation or who we profess to be.
We arrive home from church with Nortasha, but very quickly it's clear that something is wrong. We find out that her neighbour's 14-year-old son, Tyrone, has been killed in a random drive-by shooting. Tyrone had begged his mother for permission to go for a walk with friends. She reluctantly let him go. A few minutes later, he was shot dead by an unknown gunman. Only a few blocks from home.
It's an epidemic. It's hurtful, and it's... I don't even have words right now. All I can do is just pray. Pray for that mother.
Security guards keep watch as the mayor of Chicago offers his condolences to the family. It's become a grim task of office. City officials are struggling to keep up with the number of shooting victims this weekend.
From 11 o'clock yesterday morning until about 11 this morning, I've responded to 8 personally on my caseload. And so you never get used to it. It's always, this reality is always a shocker. And in this line of work, you have to be a man of faith. Otherwise, you'll get caught up and find yourself consumed in the madness.
Local children are trained about the dangers of getting shot. Nortasha's 8-year-old son, Lavelle, knows he's only allowed to walk in his own street, no further.
Come on, we're gonna go in. Oh, thank you, Lavelle.
Thank you, Lavelle.
Thank you, go ahead.
How would you explain to mothers how serious the problem of gun violence is here in Chicago?
Don't come here. Don't come. You can't even let your kids outside. For that matter, you can't go outside. You got a chance of being killed or your kid getting killed. And it's sickening. It's real sickening, and nobody cares.
I have extraordinary respect for many moms who are trying to raise their children, especially black boys, in a world that, again, just looking at the data, presents tremendous challenges in affecting, in actualizing great life outcomes for young black boys. And the thing we have to realize is we have this illusion that those children are not ours, that this is a mother struggling alone. But the reality is because of the interdependency of our society, they're all of our children. We all are vested in their success. We all benefit when they excel. The unleashing of their genius in our country and on this world is a benefit to us all. And we all pay the price should they fail. We're paying it in hundreds of billions of dollars in this country every year, the price of our collective failure. And so this is what should be motivating us. And I know we talk a lot about race, but they're all our kids, regardless of what race. And we need to be seeing them that way. These are our children.
As darkness falls, a sad ritual unfolds outside. Mourners gather for 14-year-old Tyrone Poindexter from next door, who was shot and killed.
I live just down the street. And then, we heard the gunshots. My mama thought it was my sister, but it wasn't her. And then we came down here, and I'm like, that's my cousin. And I'm like, that's Taiwan. And then Robert was the other one that got shot, and I didn't know how to react. I was just hurt.
The shooting happened just a short distance from the Chicago home of President Obama.
What would your message be to the politicians, the city officials, as a young person growing up here in Chicago, living amongst this violence?
Well, I'm scared to grow up. If I have kids, I'm gonna be scared to bring them into the neighborhoods. I think they need to put a change and stop everything that's going on.
Taiwan's little sister quietly takes her place in the crowd. It's slowly sinking in that her brother will never come home again. The fight is on to save the lives of young people on Chicago's South Side. Former gang members are being taught to settle their scores on the court rather than the street.
All the teams is from different areas that we all can war with each other with the gun violence, but this game is very important. It just gives us something to do when there's nothing to do. Because everybody know when there's nothing to do, you're gonna do something bad.
Game is on the line.
This is much more than a game of basketball. It's a chance for the community to come together. And in this case, it's the church that's trying to give young people a sense of hope, that they don't have to get into violence, that they should stay in school and sport as a way to push ahead for the future.
Come on, one more time, everybody. Two fingers, peace.
The man behind the tournament is an outspoken and energetic local Catholic priest.
Love you, Chicago South Side.
Tired of the carnage in Chicago. I'm tired of the body count in Chicago. Last weekend, 3 killed, 30 shot. Last night, there was 18 shot in Chicago. We want to stop that. And we're not going to stop it by just telling people don't shoot. We're going to stop it by giving these guys options. We're going to stop it by telling them we love them, we care about them, we believe in them, let them believe in themselves. So until we give these guys another option, we're going to continue to sit out on the street. We want them to know we love them.
Somebody say thanks to Spike Lee.
Father Flegger has some high-profile help. Filmmaker and activist Spike Lee is backing the cause.
I don't hear you. Come on. Let's encourage our young artists. Come on, people.
There's a tale of two cities in Chicago. There's downtown, and then there's the south side and the west side. Until we decide we're going to equal the playing field in Chicago, communities like this are going to continue to be violent, and they're going to continue to be dying, and we're going to have lives continue to die. Because when people feel hopeless, they got nothing to live for. When you don't have any value to your life, you don't care what happens to you or anybody else. Everybody that shoots somebody else, they've already shot themselves internally by saying they have nothing to live for.
What do you think about the Black Lives Matter campaign?
I love it. I love it because there's people, young people rising up and saying we're tired. We're tired of feeling like we're disposables in America. And people say, no, we shouldn't say Black Lives Matter, we should just say All Lives Matter. No, we know about White Lives Matter in this country. We say Black Lives Matter because the fact this country has told Black lives they don't matter. It's a cry of saying, yes, we do. And so we've got to validate that, stop trying to steal it and co-opt it.
Is this problem solvable? Do you think there's hope and future here?
Is it solvable? Hell yes. Yeah, it's solvable. We can stop violence, we can change economics, we can build houses, we can do it tomorrow, but we lack the will. And if we don't start caring about these communities are going to make people care about it.
The next morning, one of the teenagers who attended the basketball is shot in the face and killed only a few blocks from the church.
Who would do that? Deontay, he has no enemies out here. Who would do that and why?
The motive for the killing is unknown. By the end of the weekend, there have been more than 50 shootings in Chicago, leaving 8 people dead. The violence is so bad, it's become part of daily life. Special safe passage zones have been set up so children don't get shot when they walk to or from school. There's an unofficial agreement that gangs won't shoot or deal drugs when the pupils pass by. But parents know the lure of the gangs is strong.
This is what I'm telling my son. So I said, if I ever catch you on the corner or you with your little friends and your friends doing something and you joining in the activity that they're in and you acting up or you doing something bad and I found out about it, I'ma whoop your ass. Excuse my language. That's what I told my son. I put the fear, not just the fear of God in him, but the fear of me.
When you start seeing the totality of the picture of how the system really is working against certain communities in ways that it doesn't in others, you begin to wonder about wanting to address this. This idea of what you're seeing in America today, this Black Lives Matter movement, is not an assertion that Black lives matter more than others. It's really an assertion, hey, wait a minute, aren't we citizens too? Don't we deserve equal justice? Don't we deserve equal opportunity? Don't we deserve an equal shot?
There was a time when Chicago's South Side was a place of hope. Dr. Timur Black is 96 years old and a civil rights legend of the neighbourhood. His family arrived here from Alabama in 1919.
Chicago was very, very, very important for the basic reason it had greater job opportunities.
African Americans came in their thousands to escape the misery and racism of America's Deep South. Times were tough in Chicago too, but there was plenty of optimism and talent.
It was a great economic depression, but because of the concentration of talent of music and all blues, jazz, gospel, all that, we were not depressed. There was a spirituality of a relationship and a feeling, a belief that one day this was going to be better.
So there was a strong sense of hope?
Oh, absolutely.
Dr. Black was a local high school teacher in the late 1960s as gang shootings began to take young lives.
I lost more of my boy students on the streets of Woodlawn, that neighborhood of Woodlawn, than I did in Vietnam.
50 years later, many young people are still reaching out, desperate for something better.
I'm tired of living life this way. Why can't we have more books to carry, less technology, dictionaries? I speak as a team because I want to live to see my past instead of living every day like it's my last. Good or bad, which door? Because you have to be prepared for war.
But it's hard to keep teenagers engaged when neighbourhoods are left to decay and dozens of local schools are closing.
Come on now. So you don't want them to read, you don't want to go to school to learn, you want to close down the schools, but yet you'll go and build a prison that hold these kids in. But don't nobody want to talk about that. Everybody want to shh. This what's going to curb the violence. Get these kids more jobs. Get them something to do to get off the street. I come to tell them it's time. Get out here, get some structure back in these streets. It's happening to us, and if we as a people, as a community, we don't get up and get out in these streets and do it, who's gonna do it? Who's gonna do it?
But that's a heavy burden to carry. Nortasha and her neighbours are just trying to get by amid the chaos of the South Side.
I can walk down the street and get a 45, 38 from a 13-year-old. They are robbing and stealing and shooting each other. They can't shoot. That's why so many kids dying. You do something to me on my block, I'm gonna do something to you on your block. And we the same people.
Families like these are still playing catch-up decades after racist laws and practices were scrapped. Average household wealth for African Americans is still only 1/10 of that for whites. For many, the American dream has been on hold for too long.
If we think about that period from really kind of the 1980s on, there was an emphasis on incorporation into the existing system. So Black people were fed this narrative that if we just assimilate, if we just do the right thing, if we can be like the Cosbys, right, then we'll get the benefit of that we'll be incorporated in. We've been friendly for decades, right, and that hasn't worked. There's a requirement that we say that Black Lives Matter and make Black Lives Matter in this country.
I don't know that you can be American and be Black and be conscious and not be angry on some level. I don't know how you do that when people like you are getting killed. You know, like America is always asking us not to be angry.
Do you feel proud to be an American?
No, I don't. I've read some of our documents that started the country, and I'm proud about what those documents say. They say really good stuff, but no, I'm not proud to be an American. I'm not proud that America does what it does to Black people. I'm not proud of that. I can't say that I am.
Please watch yourself, 'cause I'm feeling myself. No flag on the back. Somebody get the...
It's unclear whether these children will have to fight their own civil rights battles in the future. Black Lives Matter is the latest in a long line of social movements determined to deliver justice, equality and opportunity to African Americans.
What are they going to say about our generation? In America, we have this long history. It's an ideal of ours that every generation should do better than the one before. Well, this generation has a lot to go if we're going to prove worthy of that tradition. America's greatness will not just go marching on. It's not a matter of inevitability. It has to be worked at, sacrificed for, struggled for. And so, white or black, I'm hoping that more Americans in my generation understand that the call of our country.
We don't need no freedom. We don't need these last cops. We don't need them.
I think that's the call for all of us. You know, the call for all of us is to say, we're not just gonna live the way that they tell us we have to live.
You can't stop the revolution.
We've changed our lives to be a part of this movement. That's why it's a movement, not a moment.
I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win.
These are everyday people who are standing up, you know, and becoming young leaders. We have to lay the foundation for that next generation. And we can't drop the ball. So when we are too old to fight, you know, we can sit back and just give them the knowledge to allow them to continue to fight, because the buck doesn't stop.
Fabulous, powerful. I do believe that we shall overcome. I believe blackness shines brighter than the sun.